Hi, and welcome to our family counseling and training for March of 2026. I'm Stephen Emerson, the counselor here at Hawthorne Country Day. Today, we're going to be discussing nutrition and supplements, sort of a part two to our discussion on nutrition and feeding challenges from one of our prior uh, sessions. So you can certainly go back for more information, especially if we're not going to touch on everything from that session, but there will definitely be some gaps, which you can definitely revisit. Everything is on Hawthorne Country Day website. And if you go to the About Us tab, there is a parent counseling and training section on the drop down menu. On there, you will find all of the materials and video slides from these presentations. So why nutrition matters, right? So, of course, we're talking about supporting brain development, growth, and energy throughout the day. Certainly helping our children here learn, and helps also support their social battery, as we like to say, and yeah, just general overall growth and development. Impacts behavior and mood, right? So like I mentioned, social interactions, right? So we see studies on low nutrition, low health, certainly impacting mood, and certainly problematic behaviors as they may arise. And children with autism are at higher risk for nutritional gaps. And we'll go into some of those reasons, right? Those being selective eating, right? This could include like sensory sensitivities, um, gastrointestinal issues, and strong food preferences. I mean, every child goes through stages, of course, and not every child, on the spectrum is going to have these exact issues, or any for that matter, right? So this, doesn't necessarily apply to every child on the spectrum, but just we see a strong correlation with these particular uh, factors within this population. So just things to look out for. And certainly, right. So if a child is favoring, certain types of food, they probably are avoiding maybe, if they really like fruits, but they don't eat vegetables, right? So they're getting a lot of nutrition, maybe fiber, but they're getting like sugar from the fruit. They're maybe not getting the nutrients and the minerals and vitamins from the vegetables, right? So there's just certain things that some food groups have that others don't. And so because of the reliance on, quote unquote, safe foods or foods that they're comfortable with, right? So they're going to miss out on some of those gaps. So why does picky eating happen? We go into a little bit of this on our previous PowerPoint, but just to include here for the conversation, sensory sensitivities, oral motor challenges. This is certainly something that you can discuss with your child's speech therapist as well. I know that they do, like chewing assessments and swallow assessments. So certainly things like those are, of concern. You can definitely talk to their speech therapist, as well as you'll hear me say this probably 1,000 times throughout this presentation, but certainly talk to your child's doctor. That is your primary source of information for sure, right? Like definitely lean on their pediatrician, family doctor, right? For some tips. Uh, Other things that might contribute to picky eating, where it might be anxiety around new foods, and preferences for routine, right? So, the safer, familiar foods, right? And I think we're all sort of creatures of habit, right? But where that presents a challenge, of course, is, in young children, we want to teach them, good habits, or, try new foods or try new things, right? And have, as much of a well-rounded diet as possible, right? So this early reliance on familiar, safe, routine foods can create a bit of a challenge, especially if you want to take your child out for a meal, attend a family gathering, a party, right? You're not always going to have, their familiar foods available, right? So it's always good to have them sort of build up that confidence and courage to try new things. So nutritional risks, right? So when poor nutrition exists, and obviously it's very different depending on what piece of the nutrition puzzle we're talking about. But right, so possible vitamin and mineral deficiencies could occur, limited food variety, and then risk of imbalanced diet. Right, so these are all things, whether we're talking about protein or fiber or calcium or vitamin C, D, E, right? All of these things, these all play a big role they're all little pieces to the big puzzle, right? All of these minerals and vitamins play a role in making sure that we're healthy on a day-to-day basis, different functions, different organ functions, right? So again, the effects may vary depending on what deficiencies might occur. But that's why we're looking for a well-rounded makeup here. So what are supplements, right? So if you're not familiar with supplements yourself, right? So they could be vitamins and minerals and specific nutrients used to address deficiencies and support overall health. I mean, if you go to CVS, Walgreens, any pharmacy, you can see one, maybe two full aisles of bottles of supplements, right? So there's a supplement for everything. Um, but certainly, right, I mean, best used in collaboration with a doctor. You don't need a prescription for supplements, not like you would have, a classic medication, but certainly a doctor who's done blood work, who understands your child is going to see, what specifically your child needs, right? You don't want to just go into a pharmacy and guess, right? My child doesn't need enough, citrus, so they must need vitamin C, right? Sometimes our bodies can work miracles, right? And sometimes hey, we on the surface we see our child doesn't need a lot of oranges or whatever with vitamin C, but maybe their body is actually okay, and in their blood levels for vitamin C, because we get a lot of these vitamins and minerals can be found in other foods and beverages, right? So they might be okay, right? So really, the only concrete information you're going to get is from, an assessment, some blood work, what have you, from a doctor, right? So you'll see specifically what your child needs, and then they could say, okay, you're going to need to purchase X, Y, Z, and they'll write it down for you. Like even just for myself, like I went to the doctor, I needed specifically C, D, E, and they recommended fish oil for myself, right? And so those are four specific supplements. I didn't guess. I knew what my blood work said, and I went and got that. We don't want to play guessing games, especially with the kids, right? So, always important to discuss that with a medical professional. So why families use supplements, right? So again, this addresses concerns about limited diets, so possible metabolic differences, and hope for improved behavior or focus, right? So again, behavior, mood, and overall health, right? These are sort of the three things that we're looking at as impacted by and possibly contributed by a deficiency in one of these factors. Just some examples, right? So your vitamins, right? That's where you can get your B6, vitamin D, vitamin C, E, right? I was just saying for myself, right? I take these, but also minerals, right? You're looking at your zinc, your magnesium, and then, your omega 3s, probiotics, amino acids. So, at the risk of self-disclosure on my part, right? So, like for me, like I said, my vitamins, I take C, D, E, and then my doctor recommended fish oil for those omega 3 fatty acids. So, right, so it's going to be a combination that's tailored specifically to your child here, right? So that's why it's very important. We're looking at these three different categories here, right? So not everything is the same, and then there's also different dosage, doses that are recommended. And there's also different variations, right? If your child doesn't, if you're not, able to swallow pills, you could look at liquid form, powder form. For my son, we have a powder supplement because he's not really chewing vitamins or what have you. I mean, sometimes they do like I know there's like gummy vitamins too. There's sort of like fruit snacks, right? So kids often like those. I actually kind of prefer those to pills as well, because it honestly you can treat it like a snack. So whatever tricks us into having those healthy habits, right? Yeah, so there's different forms, so you can see what works best for your child, especially if there's like any sensory concerns as well. So what does the research say? So some improvements seen in behavior and gastrointestinal health. Results can be mixed. So obviously it's not a one-stop shop, right? One size fits all, right? So not all children respond the same, right? So specifically when we're looking at supplements, right? Because you want to rule out a lot of the other medical factors, right? That may not be related at all to, autism spectrum, right? I mean, it could also just be other, family histories and what have you, right? Everyone is different. Everyone has, different biological makeup. So definitely important to consult your doctor, your child's history, and even within your own family history, right? If there's anything there as well to be mindful of. So important caution. So the risk of too much or too little nutrients, right? Again, this is why you really want to have that close consultation with the medical provider, right? Because dosages are different, especially when we're looking at children and adults, right? Smaller or larger doses, frequency. Like with the vitamins I was talking about that I take, right? I take CDE, that's once a day. The fish oil is 3 capsules a day, but I have to split it up. Right, I take like one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then one later before bed. Right, so like, and again, it's split up that way because it's not like a classic medication where you have like extended release, where it doesn't, these things are dissolved a little bit quicker into the bloodstream. You look at possible side effects as well. Um, and then always monitor, right, with a professional. Like I said, I repeat myself ad nauseum, but it's super important. Right? We don't want to go off of any assumptions. And all of the data here, all of the tips and bits of information I've pulled from different resources. The links will be up with the PowerPoint on the website. So supplements here are not a cure, right? So again, major key takeaway. Supplements are not a cure, right? So it has to be part of a comprehensive plan. So picky eating strategy. So we talked a little bit about this, and this we're going to get into. This is part of the comprehensive plan, right? So it's not just like okay, supplements and we're good, right? We really still want to work on developing those eating skills, right? The trying new foods. So just kind of broke it down simply here. So starting small, right? So maybe pick one food that you want to introduce to your child, and that's the food you're going to work on, right? So you want to introduce, let's say, apples. Okay. So pair the apple with their favorite food. So maybe you want to try this once a day. Maybe every day they have chicken nuggets, right? That's a common one, right? Kids love chicken nuggets. My son had a chicken nugget phase. We Fortunately he's getting adventurous with this chicken. Now he's going from chicken nuggets to chicken tenders. He even tried rotisserie chicken. So now it doesn't have to look and feel the same. It could be a little different, right? So, but again, that took a lot of time. That did not happen overnight. So say that, all right, so chicken nuggets is their favorite. Maybe you want to slice up some apple slices, even if they don't eat the apples, right? As long as they can tolerate the apple being on the plate with the chicken nuggets, right? That's a start. And then you can challenge them. Maybe, they're on the plate for a couple of days, right? Monday, chicken nuggets and apple slices. Tuesday, chicken nuggets and apple slices. Wednesday, maybe they taste the apple or they touch the apple, right? Introduce some sensory. Maybe even they smell. So maybe you want to start with touch and smell, right? Can they, they're just kind of getting that exposure, right? And you can reward that, right? So if they smell the apple, they get an extra nugget, right? Something like, think of some way to reward the that behavior, right? Or if there's a child that responds to like points or like a sticker system, right? You could do a sticker chart, and they get 10 stickers. Maybe there's a reward at the end for them, right? A snack or an activity that they really love. So, and then, as they start to tolerate the touch, the smell, right? Bump it up, right? Maybe the following week, okay, now we're going to taste the apple. Now, realistically, right, you're going to go through a lot of apples. So maybe only cut half the apple and save the other half for the next meal, right? I mean, you can also split the apple yourself if you like apples. Eat half the apple, give them half the apple, at least let them play with that. Right? Also we want to be economical here. We don't want to be too wasteful, right? Like I said, with my son, if I get him to try something, and he doesn't eat it, who ends up eating it? Me. So, food for thought there. Um, like I said, using praise is the next bullet point here. Again, that praise could be, clapping, could be a good job, a pat on the back. It could be, again, a reward system. Whatever your child responds to the most, you're going to know. And if you're not sure, try different things. Try things and you'll see what your child responds to, right? A lot of it's trial and error. See what the teacher does in the classroom, right? Maybe there's a way you can mirror some of the rewards at home, or talk to, if I'm the child, if I'm their counselor, we could talk about some strategies or, um, you know, OT, speech, right, whomever. And then want to keep the routines consistent. Like I said, you don't want to try the apples, but then you're not gonna, you don't want to do it on a Monday and then not do it Tuesday, right? You want to keep it daily or as consistent as possible, right? If you miss a day, it's not the end of the world, right? But try to be as consistent as you can. Um, like for my son, we would do um, dinner time, right? We were trying to get him to try. We do like protein pasta, because for a while, nuggets were his favorite, but then he stopped eating the nuggets, and we were like, I don't know what's going on. It was his favorite, now he doesn't love them anymore. So we were like, okay, now he's not getting protein. Um, so we looked at doing like protein pasta, and it took like a couple weeks for him to really start eating this protein pasta. But now it's like part of his regular diet, and now we're not worried about his protein. He's getting it somehow, right? But now he's back to the chicken, so now he's good. Now we're on to the next thing, vegetables. I will let you know when we get there with him. But we're working on broccoli. He thinks broccoli's funny. They look like trees. He thinks they're fun, but he doesn't like to eat them. He'll lick them though. He will lick them. We're getting somewhere. That's what it is. Like I have to remind myself too, right? You have to celebrate the small successes, right? Because that's huge. That's huge. Um, so like yeah, when they touch the food, smell the food, even if they lick the food, right? They're getting used to these different senses. Celebrate that, praise that. They'll pick up on that eventually. If not sooner than later. And yeah, and it'll be a huge, it'll be a huge success when it can be, right? Um, and then eventually, right? And it's okay to pivot, right? If you're going like a really long time and they're just not picking up this food, right? Like we're talking like weeks and weeks out. Maybe we choose different food, right? Because again, everyone's also going to have preferences, right? People aren't going to like everything. I certainly there's foods I don't like for sure. So and that's fair, right? So we have to also account for like their own personal taste as well. Right? So, but that you'll know when you get there, when you really feel like you're hitting a roadblock. Focusing on like, oh, okay, not to repeat myself, focus on the exposure, right? Like I said, consistent daily. Can they handle it on the plate? Can they pick up the food, smell the food, taste the food? Right? You can break it down into steps. Reduce the pressure and make meal times predictable. Right? Again, that consistency. They know they're going to hit chicken nuggets, broccoli, and apples. Right? And maybe a grain. Right? Or they like rice or pasta or whatever. Right? Some kind of carb. Um, and then yeah, so make it predictable. That way, the only thing you're really changing is that one new thing that you're introducing. So again, understanding their sensory needs, right? So in supporting our children, understanding the sensory needs, working with professionals, their doctor, what's working in school, what's working out in the community, are they involved in any other kind of programs, what's working there. We always like to say, try to mirror as much as you can, because then that's also part of the consistency, right? If the routine, obviously school does not look like home, right? Which does not look like the library or the supermarket or a restaurant, right? All these things are different locations, but if they can lean on the consistency of what the meal looks like, tastes like, feels like, smells like, if they could rely on, timing as much as possible, like their food schedule, right? If they could lean on some things that are familiar, a lot of this stuff can be mirrored from location to location, right? We're really looking at like replicatable skills. And then again, lastly, but certainly very important, addressing any medical concerns that may be contributing to any sort of nutritional deficiencies. Safety first, right? Like I said at the beginning, and every slide, consult your doctor. But also, again, to repeat, avoid self-prescribing supplements, right? It's not a guessing game. Oh, I think I need vitamin C. No, you want to know, right? Because there could be there is a possibility of taking too much of one thing. That's not good either, right? Your body may not need more of something, even if you think like, oh, I'm not getting vitamin C from source A, B, and C, but you may not realize, maybe you're getting it from a different source, and your body is actually fine. So yeah, always talk to your doctor, your child's doctor, and your own doctor, right? For yourself as well. Always important to take care of ourselves. That way we can help take care of others. Um, Putting it all together, so focusing on a balanced nutrition, not just the supplements, not just the food, right? Some combination of a well-balanced plan. Progress takes time. Be patient with yourself, your child, right? You're not failing. If it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even more, right? It takes time, and that's okay. Every child is different, and every parent's approach is different, right? We're all human beings, and it all takes time, and it's all okay. Yeah, you're not alone. Support and consistency matter, right? That's why we do these sessions every month. These resources are here for you. We're here for you. Senior teachers, the BCBAs, the teachers, the classroom, the TAs, the counselors, the therapists, right? We're all here for you, for you to help support you and your child. And we're here to sort of like, again, whatever we can mirror to make the broader community work for your child, we'll do whatever we can. Okay. Um, Unfortunately, no questions. No one's here in the meeting at this current moment. But if you have any questions, please feel free. I don't think I actually have my email written in this slide. My email is in all the other slides. I forgot to include it in this one. But it is S as in Sam, S Emerson, EMERSON, at HawthorneCountryDay.org. My extension here is 2036. And yeah, you can certainly reach out with any questions regarding the slide. Please go on our website. We're going to have the resources, the articles, everything that all this information was pulled from will be there. You could read through. There's some great websites and additional articles for further reading. And we will see you next month after the spring break for our next session. All right. Hope everyone has a wonderful spring break coming up, and we will see you real soon.